Coming up on Inside Lehman, what does it mean to be ethical in the business world? We'll introduce you to some people who are demanding new answers.
And we have a first-hand perspective on the hopes and dreams of millions of people who are trying to remain invisible in America.
Plus, we'll take a look at the murky world of pseudoscience, where some people really don't let the facts get in the way of their strong beliefs.
So sit back and relax because Inside Lehman starts now. Hello and welcome to Inside Lehman. I'm Laura Boden.
And I'm Maurice Mercado. We've all heard the expression the 1% and the 99% when speaking about who is rich and who isn't. But there's much more to it, as questions about business ethics and honesty spark demonstrations around the world.
Inside Lehman's Michael Olivencia examines the ripples from the Occupy Wall Street phenomenon and what it could mean for future business leaders.
The Occupy Wall Street protest that started here in New York has drawn global attention. The fact that this grassroots movement happened and grew so quickly already speaks about public concern over how money is made, who benefits, and at what cost. Many people are uncertain of the message of OWS, why it began, and whether it can change society, financial practices, or public perceptions. Autumn Starr, a participant in the OWS protest, tried her best to capture the spirit of Occupy Wall Street.
It's come out of an energy around a lot of different issues that have triggered a lot of different people because of inequalities and injustices that are going on. And it's a way to come together to look for alternative solutions.
Kobe Skolnick is an international student who joined the movement, hoping to make a difference.
The income inequality is just a manifestation of one thing, of greed and corruption. It's kind of umbrella. There are many other issues that are so important. Environment, people in this country, millions of people losing their house. Kids are going hungry to bed. It is not in Africa, it's in this country.
Neges Kantave focused her attention on joining Occupy Wall Street's youth committee. She says the only way to fix problems on Wall Street is to encourage young people to take control of their future.
I also just teach them the tools to step up and not just sit by and feel victimized. I really, the main thing is to empower them to not allow themselves to be victims.
It is clear that occupiers are trying to send a message to financial and political giants, telling them, "Don't tread on me." It's a start. However, clear objectives remain to be formed from all the grievances presented. While business ethics courses have become more common at many colleges, demonstrators say financial collapses and the widening gap between wealth and poverty show more needs to be done. Professor Nigel Codrington of the Lehman College Department of Business and Economics is a business attorney. He tries to instill a good sense of cause and effect in his students.
Because of the Wall Street protests, I think I do it much more. I show how the policies and the laws and the strategies that my students are learning, I show how it affects society. And so that they would become much more aware.
Still, business and economics students attend school to learn how to generate income and manage wealth. But are the legal practices learned all there is to know about business and its effects? Is there a need for students to develop a consciousness about their environment and their impact on it?
I think that the Occupy Wall Street movement has helped prod me along. What I'm trying to do is help my students become aware of those moral dimensions of their interactions at work and generally in their lives, and to be able to think clearly about them.
There seems to be this idea that if it's legal, it's okay. Not necessarily. Because something is legal, it may not be okay because it has a negative effect on the rest of the society.
The Occupy Wall Street protest has played a strong role in questioning values and priorities in America and other nations around the world. By gaining media attention, occupiers and supporters hope to set the agenda for change. Yet, would this hope, would this awareness, would this desire for change be at the scale it is without the Occupy Wall Street protest?
My study of revolutions and uprisings show that when certain conditions exist over a period of time, sooner or later, something has to give. So if Occupy Wall Street did not bring this need for stronger business ethics to our society, to our attention, something else or somebody else would have. But this could have continued for only so long because it was destroying our society.
I think that's really what it boils down to. What kind of person do you want to be? Not just what kind of rules do you want to follow. What kind of character do you want to have?
Since the Great Recession of 2008, additional regulatory policies have been instituted, and people are still wondering if that's enough to actually prevent another financial meltdown of that magnitude. Some educational institutions now have oaths in which students swear to use their knowledge to do no harm, as in the Hippocratic Oath taken by physicians. But can you really enforce a promise that has no consequences if it is broken? It's not a crime to become wealthy, but only time will tell how ethics courses and new calls for social responsibility will influence new generations of business leaders. Michael Olivencia, Inside Lehman.
People are often passionate about what they believe, but how thorough are they about actually checking the facts? Sometimes the impact of public perception and what passes for common knowledge actually overshadow the truth. Inside Lehman explores the slippery slope of pseudoscience. If you ask people to give examples of something that they just know is true, the details about how they arrived at those so-called truths may pose many questions. Was there any evidence? How did they reach their conclusions? Was it real at all?
How many people here have ever read an horoscope?
Professor Massimo Pigliucci teaches a course that focuses on critical thinking. His approach blends two very different perspectives. He is the chair of the Department of Philosophy at Lehman College, but he also has a 25-year history as a scientist. One important area of study involves the human capacity for denial when a person is subjected to trauma.
There are some people, for instance, who lose one of their limbs, an arm, and the trauma is so strong that their brain literally refuses to believe that the arm is gone.
The gap between evidence-based knowledge and popular assumptions can be huge. So much so that Professor Pigliucci has written a book entitled Nonsense on Stilts: How to Tell Science from Bunk. First, the basic question: what is bunk?
If it happened that you learned about a particular belief from a figure of authority or somebody who was very dear to you, or you have arrived at a certain conclusion because of traumatic events, those are situations where it is very hard for people to let go of beliefs, even though they may be demonstrably untrue, because there is a large emotional involvement.
In this type of discussion, students inevitably find themselves challenging society's beliefs as well as some of their own. The reactions may include everything from optimism to pessimism, or even a willingness to step outside of what they believe in to take a closer look.
I first learned about critical thinking and reasoning through Sherlock Holmes when I read that very young. Then I spoke to some of my favorite teachers growing up, and they kind of put me on the right path.
I think critical thinking is very important because I feel like it protects you from outside influences, from being led astray by an authority figure as opposed to an expert.
So, if you're seeking knowledge to tell the difference between fact and fiction, where do you turn?
Generally speaking, from books, sometimes from the newspaper, but I don't always trust even the New York Times.
It's a compendium of sources. Internet, carefully, very carefully. Certain books that have the author has a reputation for factual, and they can be cross-checked easy.
I do not rely on a single website. I check a different website.
In our daily lives, we are willing to regard some people as experts because they are trained in a specialized field or have a track record of prior success. People cite particular sources for healthcare, tax preparation, technical expertise, or even divine guidance from their house of worship. Further complicating the issue, people may turn to experts reluctantly when all else fails.
Sometimes the ego takes over, be like, I could do it, man. You know, and they try to force this in instead of using a compressor. They use their man's strength to force things in, and, you know, then that's when problems get bigger and bigger and bigger. Then, so as far as people doing in the street, it's the ego. Sometimes the ego stretches, and they go, I could do it, I could do it. A lot of times they do, but sometimes they don't. When they don't, they gotta see me.
Now that practically everyone has a computer, some people think they know how everything works. At this local computer repair shop, the technicians had to endure a customer who came in with broken hinges on his laptop.
Well, I replaced the hinges, but he believes that the power button needs to be replaced. Now, I showed it to him a couple of times. I even had to open the entire computer to pinpoint it, but he still didn't believe me. He just left unhappy.
If you're interested in medicine, you ask your doctor. If you're interested in science, you know, go to a reputable website like Scientific American, for instance. Just because you walk into a public library, for instance, I wouldn't suggest to pick up a random book at a public library and think that it's a good one because it's in the public library.
Experts? I'm the expert for my daily life.
Others honestly call it as they see it, admitting that it's hard to know what to believe.
I get up in the morning scared that I really don't know what I know because I'm getting it from secondhand sources.
I have a co-worker that I work with. He's always talking about aliens and how he thinks UFOs and everything is real, but at the same time, he doesn't really have any proof. And if he does see this, I would love for him to show me that proof.
As we navigate through daily life, pausing to think about the origin of a belief may lead to a better understanding. Is it based on fact? Did somebody else package that point of view and plant it as a suggestion? Is it a convenient and comfortable belief because it avoids greater complexities? Most of all, is there a compelling reason to accept it or to challenge it? Laura Bowden, Inside Lehman.
Still ahead on Inside Lehman, the Bronx has a new high-tech center where they're studying real science as experts from different fields combine their talents under one roof.
Plus, what is the future of the millions of undocumented immigrants in the U.S.? We'll meet a young man who has struggled to find his place for years.
And off to the theater we go for an unconventional take on a Shakespeare classic.
Travel the world.
Learn new languages.
Meet new people. Can you believe all this and more?
Starts right here.
At Lehman. Study abroad.
As technology advances rapidly and the world's needs continuously evolve, you'll hear more about so-called STEM education. That stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math.
Inside Lehman's Fatah Campbell tells us about a new science center that provides cutting-edge opportunities for research.
You're looking at the beginning of what $70 million buys in the Bronx. This is a new 69,000 square foot research building at Lehman College. Community leaders turned out for a dedication celebrating how the Bronx can become a center of high-tech research. One of the many projects here involves bringing scientists together from different areas of expertise to fight leukemia by targeting cancer cells at the molecular level.
If I tell my students that I'm making molecules that can potentially be a cure for cancer, they will be immediately excited because they can relate to it personally. There's a personal relationship with that because they can relate to having diseases.
STEM education is a hot topic as educators and industry leaders express concern that American students are falling behind other industrialized nations in math and science education. Staying ahead is critical if America is to maintain its competitive edge and continue to produce significant numbers of workers with high-tech skills.
In the 70s with the space race, we had a lot of spin-off technology just from that, 10 intense years of research that are affecting us even today. So, if we invest in science now, what would the payoff look like in like 10 years, 50 years from now?
I'm absolutely confident that the next Dr. Robert Lifkowitz, who just won the Nobel Peace Prize in chemistry, will come out of Lehman based on the work that's going to happen right here. I mean, think about the work that's going on with schizophrenia, with the study of the brain, with the retina, the eyes, with cancer. All of that is happening right here in Lehman College, right here in what I call God's country, the borough of the Bronx.
There's also a lot of science in the environmentally sustainable technology of the so-called green building. Rooftop panels produce hot water, and filtered rainwater can be used to irrigate plants and flush toilets. 77% of the building's regularly occupied space has natural daylight.
This is the first step to bring together all the sciences in one location. And we have a wonderful greenhouse which will allow work to be done at the doctoral level in collaboration with the Botanical Garden, one of our partners.
Starting in 2015, Phase 2 of the project will add more laboratories and science research facilities, and then Phase 3 will refurbish the adjacent building. Who knows what scientific breakthroughs may happen right here? Fatah Campbell, Inside Lehman.
Do you remember being a child and dreaming about what you wanted to be when you grew up? Now imagine how it would be if you were never able to pursue those dreams and you needed to live quietly in the shadows. Inside Lehman's Lilia Udina tells us about young people who call themselves the Dreamers.
I came here when I was 5 years old.
When I was 6 months old. When I was 8 years old in 2001.
As you walk the streets, you may be passing by people who don't officially exist. Many of them call themselves dreamers because they're hoping the DREAM Act will allow them to lead normal lives without looking over their shoulders.
The DREAM Act was to allow children who had come here, essentially you can picture it on the back of the mama crossing the Rio Grande River, 2 years old, maybe even smaller, who has no intention of breaking the law, has no idea of what they're doing. They're just being a dutiful parent and holding mama's hand and crossing the river and coming to America. They've done nothing wrong. Under the law, they've done nothing wrong because they could not form the intention to break the law.
This proposed legislation has been shut down in various forms since 2001. There are many requirements and details, but the bill would essentially allow people who are younger than 35 and arrived in the U.S. illegally before the age of 16 to apply for conditional permanent resident status. The bill also includes specifications about pursuing higher education or military service and living in the U.S. for at least 5 years without convictions for serious crimes. This young man, who calls himself Giovanni, is one of those kids. He grew up with all of the other neighborhood kids since he came to the U.S. at 5 years old, but his mother arranged his arrival illegally. When Giovanni was 16 years old, his mother was taken away by immigration agents and deported back to Ecuador. Suddenly, Giovanni was all alone.
I had to work, I had to go to school, and my way of keeping calm in that situation was to run, and I joined the track and cross country team.
Giovanni had to work extra hours while attending high school in order to help his mother pay for his sister's school in Ecuador. Even though the sister is an American citizen since she was born here, she followed her mother back to Ecuador, but the mother couldn't earn enough there.
My mom was making $8 a day, so now with my sister going to Ecuador, we have to pay for her school, which is $50 a month, plus educate for English, which is another $70. That's a total of $120 just for school. When you're making $8 a day, you can't afford that.
The college years were especially tough for Giovanni. There was one time when, after paying his tuition, rent, and the bills, he had nothing left for food, so he didn't eat for 2 or 3 days. Out of desperation, he decided to steal some canned food from the supermarket and got caught.
I was scared that they were going to deport me because of that, because they were already taking my fingerprints, and if I got deported at that moment, how would my sister go to school? How would I go to school? But luckily the judge, he let me off. He cleared the charges, and I managed to stay here, basically.
Giovanni is just one example of thousands of broken dreams. At Lehman College, some dreamers came together several years ago and created a club to help each other out through all these hardships and to create an awareness within the community.
It was one of the most empowering things that we were able to witness, because as a club, that was one of our main goals, to empower young people to not be afraid of their status or be ashamed of who they were, and to see so many young people coming out and no longer being afraid or feeling ashamed of who they were.
For some people, this club is a way to throw off the chains of stereotypes and finally feel like a normal person.
For me, it's more like liberating myself. Before, the normative thing is that you're told to be quiet, you're told to not talk about your status, you're told to not tell people, you always live in fear. You're living in the shadows.
An important development came in 2012 when President Barack Obama announced the beginning of Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. This law allows some dreamers who meet a strict list of conditions to remain in the country and be able to work legally for 2 years. But is that enough?
They'll tell you offhandedly, those who really don't know, oh, go home and get online. And the problem is, there is no line to get on.
I consider myself American. I've been here for so long. I know the American culture. I embraced it. I know the English language. Just like anyone else that was born here, I am American.
Being undocumented, it's a blessing. I always say it's both a blessing and a burden at the same time. A blessing because it brings you out. It's a burden because you're limited in so many things. And sometimes you cannot even move. You cannot even budge.
It seems to me to be a no-brainer. If you want to punish or not reward those who broke the law, I understand that with the parents. I can understand the argument, at least, for it. But how do you argue that the innocents, those that came when they were so young they could not form the intent to break the law, they were in fact doing what mom and dad told them? Come with us, we're going across the border. What kid wouldn't go?
Every time the DREAM Act fails, more and more people lose themselves, lose their hope.
Giovanni's dream is to become a pediatrician, but after all these years of struggling, it remains to be seen whether he will be able to accomplish that goal. After years of pledging allegiance to the American flag in their school classrooms, dreamers hope that the country they came to admire so much will allow them to share more of the freedoms that the United States is so proud to provide. Lilia Yudina, Inside Lehman.
If you're going to take on a classic and bring it to the stage, adaptations can be challenging. Inside Lehman's David Zolnacki takes us to the theater for A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Be life of want of rain which I could well.
When one thinks of the theater, there are few playwrights that come to mind as easily as William Shakespeare. His name conjures thoughts of passionate love, depthless tragedy, spellbinding drama, and men with donkey ears.
To work one day, and Mary lost her job.
One of Shakespeare's most famous comedies, A Midsummer Night's Dream is a hectic and often surreal tale of star-crossed lovers, eccentric thespians, and the mystical hijinks inflicted on them by a group of mischievous fairies. On the eve of the marriage between Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons, and Theseus, the Duke of Athens, a group of mortals find themselves caught up in the machinations of the vindictive fairy king Oberon. Be they the forbidden lovers Hermia and Lysander, or the unfortunate flamboyant members of the acting troupe, it seems everyone is in for a rough time.
Wait upon him. Lead him to my bower.
Acting in a Shakespearean play is no small task, coming with its own set of expectations and pressures. Despite this, the actors seem more excited than anything to be acting in one of his works.
Well, this was my first time doing Shakespeare, and I'd done Misanthrope, which was written in sort of a poetic language, but doing Shakespeare and like before the advent of realism in acting was a lot of fun to get to kind of just really follow his lines and the way he writes and becoming that character, so it was challenging and fun at the same time.
Although the story has been told for almost 500 years, director and professor David Sullivan provided his own spin on the material, one that fans both old and new can enjoy.
So one of the challenges in adapting the script for a contemporary audience is keeping the essence of the story there and being faithful to Shakespeare's intention with the story, but in cutting it down so that the play moves and is exciting for a contemporary audience.
Beyond the abridging, perhaps the most unique aspect of this version of the play is the setting, which is very different from the traditional forest location typically used for A Midsummer Night's Dream.
This space, we transformed it using sort of contemporary stagecraft, but the setting is inspired by 1950s, 1960s Italy.
This decision affects everything from the staging of the show right down to what the performers wear, lending it not only a unique mood, but a distinctly modern visual flair not frequently seen in such a production. The crew also decided to make liberal use of creative staging techniques to further bring the audience into this strange yet familiar world.
There's a lot of colors and a lot of transitions that we use with lighting, which we've never done before. And there's also cool elements like a smoke machine, projections, to help the audience become part of the scene and experience it all around.
But even with all the innovation and effort being put forth, there's still a question to be asked. What makes this story so appealing to audiences hundreds of years after its creation? What is it that allows such a whimsical tale to survive alongside Shakespeare's other heavyweights, like Othello and Hamlet? Even taking all the talk of duty and destiny, of mischief and mysticism, the answer is a simple one. Everyone likes a good romance.
I think there are a lot of themes in this play, but the main theme that I'm focusing on, and it's something that everybody can relate to, is a theme of love.
We have the aspect of love and passion and all those things that are still very much a part of human nature and the way we interact. So it's really all these themes that are enduring, and I think will endure as long as we are here.
Well, I think the theme of the course of true love never did run smooth. I think seeing the conflicts of what true love actually brings about when you follow through with it.
Misunderstandings, confusion, complex relationships, and, of course, love. All of these have been a part of storytelling since the birth of the written word. It is themes like these that allow Midsummer Night's Dream to resonate so effectively, even half a millennium after it was written. They are universal, as much a part of the human experience as breathing, and they find their realization yet again here on this Lehman stage. It might look a little different, but you can rest assured the feeling is the same. David Zolnacki, Inside Lehman. And that's our show. But before we go, we want to thank all of our talented reporters and crew for all their hard work. Thank you for joining us.
And we'll see you next time for more news from Inside Lehman.